Hi, this is Clark Aldrich, and thank you for joining me for this presentation on education's great pivot. If you're like me, you believe that education is fundamentally broken and that most of the this is all education. This is not just K through 12. This is through college. This is through grad school, and frankly through corporations when they do their own version of education as well. So K through RIP. The whole system is fundamentally broken, and I think in a way that is fixable. Um, but most of the institutions and organizations who are involved in education really are committed to perpetuating this broken system. They want to talk about change, but they really are not interested in real change. So that's a problem. I think it's actually a bigger problem than we're willing to give credit for. So that's my starting position is that education is fundamentally broken today. So let me give you one quick example. Let's say a local university has a class on leadership. And let's say that you actually want to become a better leader. You value leadership and you think that you have more potential if only you could become a better leader. Would you take this class? I think for a lot of people, they say no, they really wouldn't. And the question is, well, why? And it's like, well, because they just don't believe that you can learn leadership in a classroom situation. And so one of the questions that I asked in the complete guide to submissions and serious games is, can schools and corporations teach leadership? Are they even capable of doing so? Or perhaps how would they try to do it? How would they dot the I's and cross the T's and pretend to do leadership? And I think you and I have had the same sense that they do some case studies, perhaps, maybe some inspirational stories about leadership, maybe a few intellectual models about leadership. But I think we all agree, or maybe we all agree, that at the end of the process, it'd be a fairly unsatisfactory. We would not really learn how to be a great leader. We'd have a bit of intellectualization around leadership, but I don't think we'd be a better leader as a result of the program. So why is that? And one thing that I was thinking about in my book on schooling rules is there really are three kinds of learning. There's learning to do, there's learning to be, and there's learning to know. And schools are really good at the learning to know part. They're exceptionally good at it. But when it comes to learning how to do anything and then how to be someone, schools are pretty bad. And I explore this again in my book on schooling rules. So one thing I thought about as a thought exercise is, what are skills that are valued by society, um, that really have just not appeared on any high school curriculum? And it's, here's a list. It's my list. It's not necessarily the definitive list, but adapting, analyzing, and managing risks, applying economic value and governing models, behaving ethically, being a leader, building and nurturing relationships, communicating, creating and process reengineering new actions, processes, and tools, developing security, efficiently meeting complex needs of others, gathering evidence. These are all the things, again, just as a random list of things that schools do that don't do, and frankly, we want them to do. So why is that? Um, in the complete guide to submission serious games, I explored a similar list around, which has a few things that didn't make the unschooling rules list: conflict management, cost benefit analysis. These are all the things that, again, are all things that we want to know how to do. We we value it. We value it in friends. If we are hiring someone to do our job, these are all the things that we'd look for. We wouldn't necessarily look for their competency non-Euclidean geometry or Shakespeare, but we would want their abilities in process reengineering, for example. So it really begs the question, why not? So society demands this or asks this of schools, and schools say, yeah, no, not really. And by the way, corporations ask this of the training departments, and training departments say, yeah, we can talk about it, but we can't really do it. So a profound observation from unschooling rules is, what a person learns in a classroom is how to be a person in a classroom. So we sit and listen, and basically we don't really learn, we don't increase our capacity at all. So that's one thought. Here's another thought. This one came up in Simulations in the Future of Learning, which is the organizations that care the most about transferring competence and conviction to the real world use simulations. So if you really cared about someone to learning how to do something, So someone's in charge, you're putting someone in charge of running a nuclear power station. You're putting someone in charge of flying an airplane. You're putting someone in charge of cutting you open and mucking around with stuff. How do you want them to learn? And I think the answer is yeah, simulations, definitely, absolutely, 100%. You're giving someone a tank, you want them to you want them in a simulation first. So the organizations that care the most about training, teaching, developing competence and conviction in the real world use simulations. So another observation and sort of shaking out of all this stuff is when creating content for education, learning how to be a leader, learning how to be innovative requires a completely different pedagogy than learning to know. The language of doing is different than language of knowing. One thing that people who do a lot do is use sports metaphors. There's a lot of sports metaphors between people who do stuff for a living because sports provide a really great metaphor for doing. So one thing that we're starting to see is a variation of instructional design. Let's call it skeuomorphic instructional design. And this is the discipline of creating educational content that presents situations that mimic at an abstracted level their real world counterparts and how they appear and how they respond for the goal of developing targeted competencies and convictions. So when I'm thinking about this stuff, it is useful to sort of ask ourselves as a self test. First of all, let's look at it from three levels. There's awareness of something, there's competence and conviction. I understand why it's important, I understand how to do it. And then fluency. I'm able to improvise. I'm able to do new stuff with it. I'm able to do cool new things with it. And so, if we're looking at, let's say, two extremes. So one extreme are dates and definitions, epitome of facts. So I'm capable of learning dates and definitions and memorizing them and spitting them out in order. I can put things on a timeline. So again, facts, dates, and definitions versus say leadership. Leading oneself or leading others, which is obviously one of the hardest skills there are. I think if we applied this to a lot of schools, we'd say schools are really, really good at this fact stuff, this dates and definitions. We can create incredible fluidness with dates and definitions. When it comes to leadership, at best, we're capable of creating awareness. So we can't go into this area of competence and conviction. We sure as heck can't get to fluency in these skills. And so if we were playing this out a little more in sort of a traditional school environment, and I think of schools that are really good at lectures, really good at essays and reading, are really good at writing, really good at tests. When we start looking at those basic competencies, really good at dates and definitions, we're pretty good at teaching people how to write, and by writing I mean organizing facts. We're okay at basic analysis, which is basically taking facts and putting them in taxonomies, putting them in different ontologies. In some cases, basic processes, and we're okay at teaching people how to do some basic things. With math being a primary example, we can really focus hard on getting people to do some basic math. But again, so even this concept of basic processes, so schools have worked really hard at teaching people how to do math. Here's a situation that I found myself in, and I'm sure you have as well. A math teacher explains how to do a problem in a lecture. So you attend a lecture, professor or teacher is explaining a math problem on the chalkboard. Then you go home and you pull out your worksheet to do this yourself. What happens? For most of us, we we freeze up a bit. All that lecturing really wasn't very useful to teaching us how to do some, by all regards, basic processes. So does it matter? So it's a problem. In my mind, it's a problem. We were not good at teaching skills in school. Well, does it matter very much? Does it matter that schools have such blinders? Well, I think it does. And I think right now, frankly, we're seeing a school apocalypse where we're seeing a lot of schools failing. A lot of people are growing unhappy with schools. Frankly, the politics around schools have gone through the roof because there is this fundamental dissatisfaction with what is being taught. From 2010 to 2021, undergraduate enrollment dropped by 15%. About 58% of the decline occurred a decade prior to the pandemic. So less people are excited about continuing their education. Another thing is I find interesting, and I think this has to do with the skills thing as well, is schools are increasingly, especially universities where schools are to some degree optional, schools are skewing female. A lot of the males are checking out of universities, is not speaking their language. And a lot of males speak the language of skills, of learning to do, not the skill, not the language of facts, and learning to know. So again, I have a hypothesis, and I've been testing this hypothesis for a while. And the hypothesis is it's the media is stupid. It is the nature of the content itself. Schools want to do the right things. I think schools are filled with very passionate people who go into education because they want to make the world a better place. But schools also want ease and scalability and predictability. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to have to rely on great teachers, but rigorous processes. Who can blame them? So great teachers can sometimes break the education model, but by and large, we can't count on that. So if we can change the default media from learning to know media, like books and lectures and workbooks and essays, to learning to do media like simulations, then we can facilitate a lasting pivot in aligning schools with the real world. So I've been working on a methodology. I've been working for for decades on trying to figure out how do we build great educational simulations. But part two of that is how do we create them in a way that is not that doesn't break the bank? I think a lot of first generation simulations were very, very, very expensive. Some of mine were phenomenally expensive, and they won all sorts of awards, and yay me. Uh, but they were unreplicatable, and they were too time consuming. So I spent a long time trying to figure out, and I finally did it about 5 years ago, about 7 years ago, a methodology, a pedagogy for creating um, simulations that had a lot of the good features of simulations, but those also very deployable in traditional academic and corporate environments. They did not require special goggles. They did not require supercomputers to run it. So my question was how can we distill the essence of interactivity to its essence so that we can actually deploy these things? How can we have basically a soup that eats like a meal? So again, now the big question is what happens when organizations are given the opportunity to create sims that can be procured and deployed as easily as traditional content? So let me show you some real examples. Given what I'll call sims on tap, given short sims, here's what organizations did with them. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples, I think, organized around usage. So some academics created some labs. I'll take you through this. So this is a short sim on the demand curve is made for the Gates Foundation. Show you an example of it. Okay, the demand curve. Let's try a little experiment. Consider a food truck that's selling drinks. Well, wouldn't that be a beverage truck? Yeah, no, no, it wouldn't. Okay. So here it is. You have the ability to lower and raise the prices on the drinks sold. The price for a drink is currently 50 cents. Raise the price now to $1.50. Do nothing. Raise the price. Okay, I'm going to raise the price. Excellent. Price now $1. Keep going. Raise the price to $1.50. So we're going to raise the price. Boom to $1.50. Let's throw in some customers. Boom. Okay, here's some customers. There are 5 customers. So I guess when it's $1.50 on a cloudy day, we have 5 customers. See what happens when you raise the price. So we're going to raise the price by 50 cents. Okay. All right. We lost a customer. We're going to raise the price by 50 cents again. Okay. We lost more customers. Okay. So quantity of demand went down to 3 at 250. And now we're going to reduce it back to $2.50. Okay. There. So at this point, I have a little demand curve here. I'm seeing demand curve. I'm changing the prices. I'm seeing demand move around. Okay, one more thing. We're going to now wait for the sun to come out. It's cloudy today. Wait for the sun to come out. Okay. So now when the sun comes out, more people will pay. The demand goes up for drinks at the same price. So and we're showing that there. Okay. So here's a nice little example. Okay. I can ask for demand. Well, what does demand mean? Okay. That's nice. So got it. Okay, so now here's a little lab. We want to create a situation where demand equals 7. Okay, so create a situation where demand equals 7. Let's test our knowledge. So we can raise the price. We can raise the price. Demand, as we raise the price, demand goes down. We can lower it. We can lower it. We can lower it. Okay, we can lower it some more. And we want 7. So we want okay, at 250 on a cloudy day, wait for the sun to come out. And okay, we're gonna lower the price, and now there. Okay, and we did it. So that's it. Mission accomplished. So this is a little example of a sim that's used in Econ 101 that allows students very simply, very graphically to basically teach themselves about the demand curve and be able to play around with it in a very kinesthetic way. So that's one kind of thing that people are doing with short sims. Here's a corporate example. This is for people who are learning how to look at passports and find and do fraud control. So this is a little lab. Okay, here's a little lab on fraud control. Very different effect. Again, a bunch of scenarios. Okay, so you're a passport acceptance agent, and here's the applicant. Hi, I'm applying for a passport. Here are my application materials, and here they are. And now we can go and we can examine each one. And what we're going to have to do is find the problem. So we can, look at it. We can go back up again, scan down, go to page 2. Sorry, scan down, flip to page 2. There it is, and go back. And now we can go through all these documents and we can look at them. It's very realistic. All this stuff is very almost photorealistic. We can zoom in. And so what we're doing is we're engaging with these documents, and we can use the photo guide on the thing. Okay, so the photo works. Let's take a look at the applicant again. It looks pretty shifty to me. So these are, this is a very realistic lab. This is what you do if you're accepting passport applications, and you're going through this stuff, and you're finding the flaws. And so we can look at the last thing here, which is citizenship evidence. Okay, go back. So, somewhere in this pile of documents, there's a flaw. There's a potential problem. And so the last thing you have to do once you've gone through them all is find the flaw and say, there is some problem here. It turns out that the ID is of a different person, and in fact, even though all old white guys look the same, this is actually the wrong person. So that's that scenario. So it's a very good example of a very realistic exercise that punctuates a course on passport acceptance. That gets to how we can use this interactive scenario to mimic the real world. So here's another one so here's a different client wanting to use Sims for security. So this is a hostile robbery simulation. Okay, so welcome simulation on hostile robberies for bank and credit unions. This is just a test. See how well you do. Okay, so let's see how well you do. Let's start with you playing the role of a credit card specialist. It's Monday morning. You've got a busy week. A colleague called in sick, so you need to help out even more. Decide to head into work to get a few things done before things get too busy. Okay, so you're in a hurry. What do you want to have to drink with breakfast? Coffee, instant coffee, orange juice, tea, last can of Pepsi AM. Yum. I don't know. I'm going to do coffee. Okay, so coffee. You have breakfast. You get in your car and you drive to the credit union. What do? Do you park closest to the door? Do you park further from the door, or do you drive around the parking lot? So most people say I'm going to park further from the door and save the good spot for the clients. And bang, there's a robber who's hiding there, and he held up the credit union. And it turns out the right answer, if you're the first one to open up a bank in the morning, is drive around the parking lot, do some recon, see if anyone is shifty there. And it turns out there is a little fella right there. You call the police, and that's the right answer. So you back up, you lock the doors, you wait by the exit, and the police come. The figure flees, but the police later catch them with the evidence. So that's the scenario. And by the way, that's the first kind of robbery called a morning glory robbery. And this whole sim will take you through, I won't take you through them, but 4 different kinds of traditional robbery situations with the goal of saying, here's how they are, here's what they feel like, here's why these mistakes are made, and here's how you can successfully navigate them. And then so we can even go further than that. We've gone from basic labs. Some clients are asking us to do labs. Some clients are asking us to help managers become better managers. But some clients are pushing us even further and saying, well, let's start handling some of this big stuff. So here's a client on goal setting. This is for advanced high school students. Okay, welcome to the goal on goal setting. In the sim, you're a high school student. There you are. And you know what? You want to be a great person. You want to do great stuff in life. And so this goal is all about is about figuring out what you want to do on your path to greatness. Okay. So you think best when you're long distance running, and several of your heroes, journalists and politicians, ran marathons. Okay. So for your goal, for your big goal, for your desire to do something wonderful, running comes to mind. So maybe, people around you say, hey, why don't you run in a local race? But you want to be bigger. So the first thing you do, and this is how you think about big goals. First, you think of some crazy goal to unchain your brain. So win a marathon in under 2 hours. Crazy goal. No way that's going to happen. But that's how you start, under 2 hour marathon, but it frees up your thinking, and then you fan it out. And you say, well, okay, I'm not going to do that, but what's a little less than that? We'll win the Boston Marathon. What's a little less? Place in a marathon. What's a little less than that? Finish a marathon. Place in half a marathon. Finish half a marathon. Run a mile. Don't pursue this goal at all. So here are your options right now. You're fanning out your goals. This is a process. And then some next thing you do is you start trying to figure out how much commitment each of those goals would take. So now you as the player want to think through the goals. Which one do you want to do? Do you want to finish a marathon? That seems a bit scary. Do you want to place in a marathon? That seems exhausting. But you know what? Let's do this. Let's commit to the marathon. Well, you try to accomplish the goal, but the time commitment each day is just too great. So you know what? It's not going to be a good goal. So all right, we're going to consider a decreased level. Finish a marathon. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish a marathon. Well, you know what? You work hard, you do it, but frankly, no one really cares. And so you end up having wasted a lot of time by finishing a marathon. All right, well, heck with that. So I'm going to consider decreased goal. In fact, you know what? This whole running thing is not panning out for me. So I can't find anything here that actually makes it worthwhile. So I'm going to commit to a goal other than running. And you know what? I'm also really like movie making. You can go through the same process of thinking about your goal, and let's say, you know what, this seems like a good goal. Let's see if I can create a documentary and get it into a documentary festival. So that's what you do, and frankly, it changes your life. So this is simulation, again, a short sim. This is not a huge time commitment on either my part of creating it, nor on the player's part of playing it. But it covers a lot of ground, and now once you go through this process, frankly, now you can apply it in the real world. I can assign this as homework in a high school class, and now we can discuss it. And now we can not only discuss this sim, but also, okay, now let's actually do this. Now let's actually go through the process. Here's another sim on deliberate practice. So in the short sim, you've joined a local debating club in your spare time, and you're enjoying it. Okay, that's nice. Your favorite online game is a debating app where you select the best arguments. While frustrating at first, so whenever you start something, it's frustrating. Over time, you get in the flow of it. Now these arguments, this analysis and these arguments are completely relaxing for you. Second nature. Okay. So through your debating experience and analysis game, you've now gained some ability in real world debating skills. So for this sim, first question, do you want to become truly great at debating or just want to screw around? And that actually is the first decision before going down this area of deliberate practice. Well, you know what? I want to become truly great at this. Okay. So you decide you want to be truly great at debating. You know that you're going to have a stronger, more interesting career path if you can convince other people of your position. However, after a couple of months on the debating club, you feel like you've stalled. Very typical. So you want to be good at debating, but you keep debating and you're not getting any better. So to become great, which do you do? Do you join more debating clubs and communities? Do you spend more time debating? Or do you spend more time working on technique? Well, yeah, let's do the wrong thing first. You can spend a lot more time debating and being in the flow, but you know what? You're just not going to grow. Okay, so let's go back and try something else. I'm gonna work on my technique. Good. To learn about techniques, you now decide to gain insight from some of the great debaters over the last decades. You want to learn from the best. So you can access, let's say in the sim, you can access plenty of footage of the best debaters in the world. What do? Do you watch the great debaters delivering their greatest debate performances? I mean, like the wow, get the popcorn, watch them be great. Do you watch the great debaters delivering as many arguments as possible, successful and unsuccessful? Or do you watch the great debaters preparing for debates? Again, hopefully the answer is obvious here, but again, in the real world, without this sim, most people just love watching the great debaters deliver the great performances. When presented this way, almost Socratically, people say, you know what? Actually, I'm going to watch the great debaters preparing for the debates. That's how I learned to be good. So, one part of being a great debater is a topic analysis and coming up with the right argument where you're already strong. You're already really, really good at kind of coming up with the zingy arguments. But another part of being a great debater is the ability to connect with the audience. The best debaters practice here as well. And you're not very good at this. You're not very good at connecting with your audience. So it comes at no surprise where you're strong. You're really good at the screen part, the analysis. You're really bad at connecting with people. Right now, you're a bit of a smart aleck. And you don't really enjoy it either. Kind of, who cares about people? You want to show everyone how smart you are. So now to improve your debating skills, you're going to practice. Where are you planning to practice? Where you're strong, analysis and arguing, practice where you're weak, connecting people. Obviously, the wrong answer is analysis and an argument. You'll never get better if you're focusing on where you're strong. So you got to focus on where you're weak, in this case, connecting with people. So you say, you know what? I need to get better at connecting with people. So you decide to focus on engaging people. Well, how do you do it? And so in this sim, you have a great idea. You're going to still debate in your clubs, but in your free time, you'll practice by volunteering for a group that you care about and spend time convincing local people to sign petitions. You set up a routine for yourself. So every day at 4 p.m., you're going to work on this activity. Really important, setting up a routine. Uh, you know, you're going to keep track of progress. How are you going to do it? And so again, I'm not going to take you through this, but it takes you through the process of all the specific skills that you do for deliberate practice in order to become world class. And by the end of the sim, obviously you become an increasingly strong debater. So it's a whole different use of short sims, and again, very different feel from our early examples of demand curve of things. I'm not gonna go through these, but there's sims on leadership. I do want to learn how to be how to lead in a corporation. And so, what is the first skill of leadership? And so we're going to take you through this sim where you're a leader and you have to manage a team. And then there's some around when do you micromanage versus when do you delegate a little bit of authority, or when you delegate processes, which is a little bit of authority, versus when you delegate all your authority, when you give someone complete control. So you can practice with that as well. So thank you for that. We went through a bunch of examples of where real clients are pushing for short sims. And what I found is that clients have been extending this notion, have been pushing for skills-based learning. So we saw some examples of STEM or certification skills. Project management, I didn't really show you any of those, but you can imagine those. Security and stewardship, the robbery ones, good examples of that. Management, self and others, how do I be a good manager? And then leadership, self and others, how do I lead my team? How do I lead myself? So I'm seeing and we are seeing every day clients pulling us around from caring about facts to caring about skills. We're also seeing is every new short sim opens up new content doors for new content. So we do a sim, and almost inevitably clients say, hey, there's 3 more sims that we now want to do. So it's a bit of a critical mass, a bit of a cascade where every new sim opens up doors to other sims. So this is not a magical solution. It takes effort and time to create a short sim. It's tough to make a situation simple. And hopefully in these examples that you've seen, hopefully you're impressed by the simplicity of them as much as the ability to go after skills that we haven't been able to do before. So there's new pedagogy, and frankly, there's a lot of really bad role models for creating simulations. Computer games, as much as I love them, and boy do I, they're really demoralizing to try to create educational content with computer games as a framework. Choose your own adventure books are also bad examples because they focus on parallel narratives, which turn out to be terrible in most educational situations. Medical sims, way too expensive. Flight simulator, same thing. Military sim, same thing. Just too expensive, require too much specialized hardware, are not maintainable. Even storytelling. being good at telling stories. A good short sim isn't really story focused. It's process focused, it's context focused, but the story is pretty banal in most cases, and as it should be, because stories are all about exceptionalism. And in most cases, short sims are teaching you how to do something without being a superhero, without being this amazing person. So what we've done is we've created a class. We've created a short sim class, a workshop that's available on my site, and it allows people to get a certificate in short sim design by creating short sims the right way. So at the end of the day, if you want to improve education next year, hire a great teacher. If you want to improve education for a decade, come up with new roles for students and teachers. Also really important. But if you want to improve education for a century, if you want to fundamentally create a permanent change in education, we have to create a better approach to educational media, which in the short term is going to be short sims. Short sims are how we get there. Because over time, all approaches to education, no matter how revolutionary they begin, will regress back to the pedagogy of the dominant media at the time. So as we go back to this list, so hopefully, as we go back to this list for homeschooling rules, managing projects, negotiating, being a leader, communicating, I think when I first presented this list, you probably thought, well, those are impossible in a lot of cases, or without a lot of time and money. I'm hoping that as you've seen some short sims, you see this list and go, oh, yeah, sure. That is how we're going to check off that list. That's how we're going to develop educational content to meet these needs. So this is education's great pivot, and we're seeing a lot of organizations beginning this pivot to changing the very nature of education. It's incredibly exciting. It's incredibly fun. And again, if you are interested in this topic, and boy, I sure hope you are, visit me at www.shortsims.com and figure out how you can either learn how to create short sims yourself. The workshop is the best way of doing it by far. Or if you want to, as an organization, you want to procure some short sims or get them built, find someone who's good at building short sims, including myself and my team, and start going down this incredibly new direction for education towards relevancy and power. Thank you so very much.